The night crackled with unease. Shadows danced in the flickering candlelight. A chill wind whispered through the trees outside, rustling leaves like whispered secrets. Tonight, we delve into the dark corners of our fears. Prepare yourself for tales that will send shivers down your spine. Stories that will make you afraid to turn off the lights. These are the stories that haunt our dreams. The ones we tell late at night, voices hushed, clinging to each other in the darkness. Are you brave enough to continue? Turn the page, if you dare. An old television flickered in a darkened room. Rain lashed against the windows, a steady drumming that masked all other sounds. Inside, a young boy, 10 years old, sat mesmerized by the static on the screen. His parents were gone for the night, and he was home alone. He knew he wasn't supposed to stay up so late. He knew he should be in bed, but there was something about the static, a strange pull he couldn't resist. Then he saw it, a shape in the static, a figure, tall and thin, with long, sharp fingers. Lost in the deep woods, miles from civilization, stood a dilapidated cabin. Its wooden walls were rotting, windows boarded up, and an eerie silence hung in the air. Two friends, out on a hiking trip, stumbled upon it as the sun began to set, casting long, menacing shadows across the clearing. Despite the unsettling feeling that crept up their spines, they decided to spend the night. The forest was too dark to navigate, and the cabin offered shelter. As darkness fell and the temperature dropped, they heard a scratching sound from outside. It grew louder, more insistent. Someone or something was trying to get in. In a dusty antique shop, tucked away on a forgotten shelf, sat a porcelain doll. The shop was filled with relics of the past, each item holding a story of its own. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and forgotten memories, and the shelves were lined with trinkets that had seen better days. Its eyes were wide and glassy, staring blankly ahead. The doll's face was eerily lifelike, with delicate features that seemed almost human. Its expression was blank, yet there was something unsettling about the way it seemed to watch everything around it. A young girl, browsing the shop with her mother, felt strangely drawn to it. She couldn't explain why, but there was something about the doll that captivated her. She felt a strange connection, as if the doll was calling out to her, beckoning her to come closer. The doll seemed to call to her. It was as if it had a voice of its own, whispering secrets that only she could hear. The girl felt a chill run down her spine, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from the doll's gaze. Against her better judgment, the girl's mother bought the doll for her. She had seen the way her daughter was drawn to it and couldn't bear to disappoint her. As they left the shop, the girl clutched the doll tightly, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. That night, the girl awoke to a strange sound coming from the foot of her bed. It was a soft, almost imperceptible noise, like the rustling of fabric. She sat up, her heart pounding in her chest, and strained to see in the dim moonlight. There in the moonlight stood the doll. Its glassy eyes seemed to glint in the pale light, and its expression was as blank as ever. But there was something different about it now, something that made the girl feel a deep sense of unease. But it wasn't in the same position she had left it in. It had moved. The girl was certain of it. She had placed the doll on her dresser before going to bed, but now it was standing at the foot of her bed as if it had walked there on its own, and its eyes seemed to follow her, watching her every move. The girl felt a shiver run down her spine as she realized that the doll was not just a lifeless toy. It was something more, something that seemed to be alive in a way that she couldn't understand. She knew then that the doll was not just an ordinary antique, but something far more sinister. Section 5. Midnight Whispers. A young woman, Sarah, lived alone in a creaky old house. One night, as she lay in bed, she was awakened by the sound of her name being whispered. The voice was soft, almost inaudible, but definitely there. She sat up in bed, her heart pounding in her chest. She listened intently, but the sound didn't return. Convincing herself it was just her imagination, she lay back down. Just as she was about to drift back to sleep, she heard it again. Sarah. This time the voice was closer, right next to her ear. Section 6. The Hitchhiker. On a dark and lonely highway, a lone car sped through the night. Rain slammed against the windshield, blurring the driver's vision. The driver, a young man on his way home, noticed a figure standing by the side of the road, thumb outstretched. Hesitant at first, the young man eventually pulled over. The hitchhiker, an old woman with a kind face, thanked him for stopping. As they drove, the old woman spoke of strange and unsettling things, her voice a low monotone. Then she turned to the young man and smiled, a chilling, too-wide grin that revealed rows of sharp, pointed teeth. Section 7. The Red Balloon. A little boy, playing in a park with his mother, noticed a red balloon tied to a bench. No one else seemed to see it. Intrigued, he wandered over to it, his mother distracted by a phone call. As he reached out to touch it, the balloon seemed to pull away from him, as if alive. He followed it deeper and deeper into the park, his mother's voice fading into the distance. The park, once filled with the laughter of children, was now eerily silent. He was all alone. Section 8. The Mirror. An antique mirror hung in the hallway of an old house. It had been there for as long as anyone could remember, a silent witness to the passage of time. Its silver backing was worn away in places, giving it a cloudy, distorted reflection. The frame, once ornate, was now chipped and faded, adding to its eerie presence. One day, a young woman moved into the house. She was excited about her new beginning, unaware of the secrets the house held. She didn't think much of the mirror, dismissing it as just another piece of old furniture. To her, it was just a relic of the past, something that added character to the house. But as the days turned into weeks, she began to notice something strange. The mirror seemed to have a life of its own, an unsettling presence that she couldn't quite put her finger on. The reflection in the mirror didn't always match her movements. Sometimes it lagged behind, as if the mirror was thinking before it responded. It was subtle at first, just a flicker, a hesitation. She thought it was her imagination, a trick of the light in the dim hallway. But as time went on, the discrepancies became more pronounced. The reflection would smile when she was frowning or look away when she was staring directly into it. One day she swore she saw the reflection wink at her. It was a brief moment, but it sent chills down her spine. She recoiled, her heart pounding, as she realized that the mirror was not just a piece of old furniture, it was something more, something alive, watching her every move. From that day on, she avoided the mirror as much as possible. She covered it with a cloth, hoping to block out its unsettling presence. But even then, she could feel its eyes on her, a silent observer in the shadows. She began to research the history of the house and the mirror, hoping to find some explanation. What she discovered was a tale of mystery and tragedy, a story that made her blood run cold. The mirror had once belonged to a family who lived in the house over a century ago. According to old newspaper articles, the family had experienced a series of strange and tragic events, all seemingly connected to the mirror. Determined to uncover the truth, she decided to confront the mirror. She stood before it, her reflection staring back at her with an intensity that made her shiver. She knew that whatever secrets the mirror held, she was about to find out. Section 9. The Vanishing Portrait. An old, wealthy man lived alone in a grand mansion on a hill overlooking the town. The mansion, with its towering spires and vast echoing halls, was a testament to his immense wealth and status. Yet, despite the opulence, the mansion was shrouded in an air of melancholy and isolation. The only company he kept was a portrait of himself, painted when he was much younger and full of life. This portrait was not just a piece of art, it was a reflection of his past, a time when he was vibrant, hopeful and full of dreams. The portrait hung above the fireplace in the main hall, a constant reminder of his lost youth. Every evening he would sit in his grand armchair, gazing at the portrait, reminiscing about the days gone by. The fire's flickering light would cast eerie shadows on the walls, making the portrait seem almost alive. One night, during a violent thunderstorm, the old man suffered a heart attack and died. The storm raged on, with lightning illuminating the mansion's dark corridors and thunder shaking its very foundations. When the housekeeper arrived the next morning, she found the old man lying dead at the foot of the stairs. But something was different. The air felt colder, and an unsettling silence filled the mansion. The portrait above the fireplace was empty. The once vibrant image of the young man had vanished, leaving behind an empty frame. The old man's image was gone. The housekeeper, bewildered and frightened, couldn't understand how a painting could simply disappear. Whispers of the mansion being haunted began to spread through the town, and the mystery of the vanishing portrait remained unsolved. Section 10. The Final Fear. As the night deepens and shadows grow longer, remember these tales. The static on your TV screen might be hiding something sinister. The creaking in your house might be more than just the wind, and that whisper you hear in the dark, it might just be calling your name. Sleep tight and don't be afraid of the dark. Too afraid, that is.